All right, it's 10. Let's do this. Welcome. So you don't actually know how long this agenda is. I will tell you it hits this whole page. So I had to move the agenda subtitle up there to get it all in. So the first thing, and this is the feature that I think that most of you in here are going to be most excited about, is the cover art uploader. We did finish testing for this. I had several of you in here who participated in that testing. It is a feature that was developed for Evergreen, Indiana specifically. And it is something that we are very hopeful to see in the 3.7 release, or sometime thereafter. It will be available to Evergreen, Indiana sooner rather than later, as opposed to just a general Evergreen release. So I'm going to actually click out here. This is the test server that we used to test the feature to make sure it was working correctly. And I'm going to also show you, it's an easy thing to use. This is a feature that will be available to anybody with Cat 1 permissions. So they will have then the ability to add their own cover art. And I would encourage you to think of what the implications are for that. You may, in some cases, if you are talking about kits or things like that, need to be setting up a photography studio in your library to get these pictures, or however you're approaching it. Doesn't really matter to us, because you will now have the option to do this. There will be some copyright considerations in some cases, but that doesn't matter today. And that doesn't matter about the software. That's just a policy thing. So I'm just going to do a very brief catalog search. Because this is a demo server, essentially, for Evergreen, it uses what's called the Concerto database or data set, which has some stock bib records in it. In case you are unfamiliar with it, it comes from the Berklee School of Music. And so the bibliographic records that are included in it are those things you would find in a special library for a music school, as opposed to a popular lending library, as most of our public libraries are. So I'm going to be searching for bassoon, because I know I'm going to get something. And you can see in here, because this is not connected to a cover art service, which we do use with Novelist, and we've used some others in the past for Evergreen, Indiana, that there are actually a lot of things that don't have cover art in here. And I do want to show you some of the shenanigans that we got up to as we were testing. You kind of could see it there. So I did a search for cello, and I do want to let you know that Prince really had nothing to do with this cello concertos. Neither did the Queen, Beyonce, have anything to do with these. These are all things that were added by us testers as cover art. You can also see there are some quality issues with some of these. For instance, Neil Young, for the Oration Concerto, can't actually pronounce Italian particularly well. There are some issues with the way that this shows up. So as you are looking to add cover art, you'll want to keep your image quality in mind. We did have a lot of fun doing this, so picking the images. So what you will do with this feature, let me pop back to, I'm going to go back to bassoon. I know a lot of us did a lot on cello. So we have this right here. You're going to go into the record. You can see that this is the new staff catalog. And under here, and the other actions menu, which we don't actually use a whole lot right now, unless you're adding things to a bucket, there's going to be a new thing here. This is actually going to say upload cover image. We had some talk about the language, and jacket is really an older term that refers almost exclusively to books. And because this is something that is not only associated with books, we wanted to make sure that it made sense. There are some people who cataloged who never deal with books, and so this might not be something that was intuitive for them. So, but in this case, upload jacket image, you're going to have then the opportunity to select an image. The way that we have this set up right now, it limits the size of the image to 300 kilobytes or less. This is a setting that we configure centrally, so that if I were to select this image here, which I see in the details is too big. Oh, they must have blown away my settings. Never mind. So you can see here that actually did accept that, but there's no image here yet. It looks like it didn't work. One of the things that came up during testing, and this will be in the documentation, is that this requires oftentimes to see something instantly, a hard refresh. And to do that, you're going to, in this case, I am in Chrome. And so I go to this vertical ellipses here in more tools, go to developer tools, and that opens up this. You don't have to worry about any of that junk. But up here now on the refresh button, you can right click on it and it gives you some more options. And I'm letting people in at the same time as I'm doing this. And now if I click hard reload and wait a second here for it to do said thing, now you can see that I have that image there. Now this is not what I would consider a good quality image for this. It really should be something that is more in portrait than landscape. We will provide the in the documentation, it actually gives you information about that type of thing. But what this does now is it adds the image, it rescales that image that was uploaded. It puts it here in the record summary. It puts it in the patron view, that being in the actual individual record. If I click on that, I can see that here. And now also, if I do the search again, and I'm going to do bassoon, it also then comes up in the search results. And you can see, because of the way that, because the image that I chose, that this doesn't actually look particularly good, but there is an image there. If I had done a better job selecting the image, it would look great. So that is something that everybody with Cat 1 permissions will now be able to do when we upgrade. That is to add that cover art without having to submit a help desk ticket for it. This can be a really big deal for libraries who are hoping to provide more indication what's in their library of things, so people know what they're getting from that visual aspect, to add covers for older things that may not be available from our cover art third-party providers, and all the et ceteras. There are a lot of far-reaching things. This is going to make the catalog look better, work better for everybody, and you guys get to do it. Yay. So that is that. Any questions about the cover art uploader? There is more technical stuff that got built into it, but that is how it works, pretty simply, pretty elegantly. Okay. If you do have questions, just throw them in the chat box. The next thing that we're going to talk about is Anita. She's sitting right here. She doesn't have to do anything. We did have a lovely webinar this Thursday past with Anita talking about conjoined items. About just shy of 40 people participated. Great questions, great conversation about the whole thing. I think there were a lot of people. Oh, Katie says, Anita, I already made my first virtual shelf with conjoined items. Fantastic. I am going to, I should have already done this, share this agenda with all of y'all so you have all of these links. And let me do that because I know not everybody does fill out the check-in. So I won't actually have a record of everybody's email. Okay, I'm going to do this. You guys get to watch me do it all. That's what we're going to do. I love how I did that and then didn't actually copy the link. Okay. I'm putting this over into chat so that you have access to the agenda on the slides here. And now I'm going to close it so that you can actually get to all of these links here, including the recording of the webinar. Oh, don't want to hear me talking. And then also Anita's slide deck, which goes through all of the technical aspects of how to do this. It was great. Again, thank you very much, Anita, for that. Kristen, I'll have the check-in thing at the end, so you're good. I usually do it at the end because people come in late and yeah. Okay, the other thing that I mentioned in the email is there are some other ways that you can group items for discovery. And I mostly just wanted to remind you of them. The first being lists. Lists have in recent years been a bit of a bear in Evergreen because when they got to a certain size, they would time out essentially and throw an error. And that is really not something that we love for our patrons to experience. So I do recommend lists. I do recommend lists at this point be kind of short. And when I say short, I mean 50 records or less. I always test the upper reaches of these things. I have lists that have 150 items in them. Not that I've used recently, but yeah. The nice thing about lists is that they create essentially what looks like a results page in the OPAC, and people can just do their regular stuff. They can go into the individual record, they can place holds, they can check out the whatever, and you're somehow grouping that. You can publish it as an HTML page. You can also print it. So we have seen improvements in lists as the servers have been upgraded and more resources have been allocated. I would say aspects of me are really excited about doing experimental things until we start promoting it to patrons who have much less tolerance for things breaking. They shouldn't have to tolerate it. And so I would encourage you to experiment with lists and build your own confidence with them. And once you feel confident, if you feel confident, use them. They are a great thing to use in conjunction with. They do not replace the functionality of either conjoined items or the other thing that I have on here, which is carousels. Now, carousels. We're going to have a December training for that. This is going to be available before that, and we will roll it out in the OPAC at the upgrade. So there will be some stock ones that you will see there. But there will be a designated training for people to create their own carousels. And this is the registration link there. I believe it is Monday, the 13th of December, the day before the executive committee meeting. So I would encourage you to participate in that. In my mind, none of these things replaces the functionality of the other. They can work in tandem. They can improve discoverability when they're working in tandem. And the other thing that I will say is that all of these, at least to a certain extent, rely on the concept of buckets. And so if you have not been using buckets, I would encourage you to play around a little bit. We will have the test server available to you by next week. It's all working, everything. We just have to get its refresh cycle back online so that when you make mistakes, like I make mistakes, which is the absolute purpose of the training server, it resets itself to a nearly pristine state without the mistakes. So we can start over and make new ones. And then this is the link to get to the training server. What I have not done in here, because I completely forgot about it, was also link the staff accounts that you need to use the training server. So I will add that to this as soon as we are out of this meeting, because you can't really use it if you can't get into it. But you can see what they look like. Okay. So this also then brings to mind our cover art uploader, which carousels really only work well. They are a visual representation of stuff if there's good cover art associated with whatever is in the catalog. But you can see how this is going to be rendered on the website. And there, at some point, there may be some tweaking to be done in terms of what exactly. Of course, if you're using Concerto, you have the full title there. But you can see, and these are all based off of buckets that have been then turned into carousels. Not pretty here, but you get the idea that if this had all of the cover art in place, it would be a whole other thing completely. Okay. I'm going to take a breath. I'm watching the clock, just making sure that we get through this stuff. And then also, if there are any questions or things that you want to talk about, you can let me know and we'll go forward with that. We have a lot of training that is upcoming. One thing I did not put in here as I'm thinking about upcoming training, and first of all, I already said we have the training for carousels coming up, is that the CAT 1 or advanced cataloging training, it is on the calendar for, let me see if I can actually see my calendar with all this stuff in the way. The 19th and the 20th of October. If you are scheduled for one of those trainings, I'm going to tell you how this is going to go down. We are going to meet on the 19th and we're going to spend about an hour together. That will be worth the one LEU. And what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to, and it may not last a whole hour, but it will be worth one LEU, how to use the asynchronous course, which will be ready to go by then. And so that you can, if necessary, if you need to do this whole training, you can go through that at your own pace on your own time. And you don't have to take that time out, those 3 hours for 2 days, out to do that. So we won't then meet on the 20th. And this will then, for Cat 1, will become a more automated, although it will still be moderated by me in terms of seeing what progress people are at and checking in, that type of thing. But you can do that at your own pace. So we'll meet for that first hour on the 19th, basically to say, this is how this works. Welcome to this, and move forward. That is going to hopefully be then the mode for all of our regularly scheduled Evergreen Fundamental Skills courses. So those being basic cataloging, advanced cataloging, circulation, holds and transits, all of those. And that way we can spend our live time doing more of these niche things and digging down into some of the features and talking about specific workflows, and also similar to what Anita has done and some that are coming up, look at what you have done and do some more collaborative stuff from outside the community rather than me just walking you through software. So that is the goal for that. But we also have these other upcoming trainings, including Maps with Jocelyn Lewis, which I'm very excited about. And Jocelyn got to do some testing on the cover art uploader. This is something that's going to be very meaningful for maps, because you can add pictures of the maps or something there which you couldn't previously do. Then we're going to have serials with Sarah Childs. This is going to be a bit of a precursor to us developing the pilot to really roll out with documentation. The serials module for Evergreen, Indiana. The functionality has been there all along, but we haven't really been training people how to use it. As there is with almost all software, and we know this from libraries, we always find a way to do things. And there is functionality in Evergreen that has, of course, obviously you've been able to circulate your magazines, and if you have journals and your newspapers, and libraries have figured out how they want to do that, how they want to count it, how they want to hold people accountable. But there is also a module in Evergreen that makes it all kind of flow, has predictive patterns and things like that for when you get a daily paper, or you get a monthly magazine or a biweekly magazine or whatever. And so Sarah is going to show us what they have been doing at Hussey Mayfield. And then after that, after the first of the year, on our pretty loaded schedule, we're going to be looking at providing more training on how to use that for everybody in a more general way that's not Hussey Mayfield specific. So we're very, very happy with Sarah having basically lit a fire. Sometimes that's what needs to happen, is to light a fire under the use of certain features. So, okay, the new cataloging features in Evergreen 3.4. There are going to be 2 webinars on November the 4th, one at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, one at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. They're identical to one another. You don't have to take both. Please, I beg of you, don't take both unless you really love it so very much, in which case I'll be there for both. This is going to serve as the 2021 cataloging refresher. So anybody with a Cat 1 permission level, in so much, and I know that there are reasons why people can't, needs to take one of these. The recording will be available and will count as the refresher. There'll be a little bit of additional stuff in there, but not a whole lot. And that's going to also go through the, to get that refresher certification, it will go through the learning platform. You can watch the video if you don't care about getting that, and then it doesn't really matter because it'll all be on YouTube. But I highly encourage you, if possible, to attend one of those, because then any questions that you have, we can do some real-time feedback on that. There are so many new features that we will be rolling out, and new interfaces as well. So something may look different. There will be buttons in different areas that we decided to split the cataloging features from the general new features webinar. There will be also a new features webinar that doesn't go as far in depth with the cataloging features. And I believe that's on the 12th and the 14th. Again, there are 2 sessions that are identical to one another. And the registration links are in the Evergreen calendar on the website. Okay, this is the last thing that I really have right now. So I know at the last time that we met, I have been working a lot on parts right now, and I think I'm going to show you kind of how I'm doing it. I don't want anybody to feel called out whatsoever. I understand why the situation with parts is in the state that it is. And so please don't anybody feel called out at all. Previously, I had written here, all transiting media should be prioritized. And as I have been working through this, I changed that to all media should be prioritized, because we have a lot of items that, and I'm thinking specifically of things on records that have different circulation modifiers. And I just give the example of a DVD where one library may have a circulation modifier as transiting video disc, and another may just have a circulation modifier of DVD. We can't really just prioritize the transiting media because these are all on that same record. And even if that DVD doesn't have a part assigned to it because they're not worried about somebody outside the library discovering it, it does affect how everybody sees that thing in the OPAC, and becomes confusing to anybody who is trying to place holds, including their own patrons, when they look and they see that I'm trying to come up with the appropriate label that I can refer to this forever as the any unassigned parts label, which is the black hole of sorrow at this point, because you just don't know what that is. So I started out, and I'm pretty sure that I showed you part of this before. Part of this. I laugh at my own joke. So I have created this bucket tracker. You guys don't know this yet, but I've created a shared bucket for every single library in Evergreen, Indiana. And I have all the IDs tracked for it. I have included Porter County, even though they haven't migrated, so they don't actually have a bucket yet because they have 0 data that I could actually look at. And you can kind of see here, and I'm purposely kind of scrolling through here fast so that nobody else is looking in the library saying, oh, it's terrible. How many records I started with. This is not an entire collection for any library because I was only looking for records with transiting circulation modifiers. So, and then keeping track as I make some progress, I'm kind of right around here-ish, but none of these are accurate now because of what's happening when I do this. And the reason that I decided to take this on is because I have some different permission levels than all y'all and can do some things that essentially nobody else can do. Maybe Lynn, but this is not something that she would be able to prioritize in her daily workflow. So I'm gonna pop into item buckets. And you can see here my many, many buckets. And I'm actually just going to pick at random Jefferson County. And you can see that in here, there are 902 records. Again, I know that this is not completely accurate. It doesn't have to be, because any progress that gets made is progress that gets made. One of the things that I have found is a huge pain in the neck is the fact that you can't have a column for parts in item buckets or in record buckets. Record buckets is a whole other thing that is both useful and provides me with all sorts of angst. So, but the nice thing is I can select these all, and now I have the opportunity to open this in item status. And you can see here where previously none of these things had parts assigned, that as I work in other libraries, I'm actually assigning some parts to all of the libraries. Now, I'm going to just click on this one and have a little bit of hope here that there are multiple libraries. Okay. When I assign parts, I do want to let you know that I am not doing it to any record where there's any real question in my mind that it's going to cause damage. If there are parts such as disks 1 through 3 or disks 4 through 6, and it's not like explicitly outlined like in the call number or something like that, I don't touch it. I put it in a record bucket so that I can send that all out to y'all to refer back to it and make some local determinations. I only do anything with things with a full confidence that I don't need to have the thing in hand. There are some things I can't do that with. But in this case, and a couple of things that I do want to point out, there are items in here that are lost, and I can understand why locally that would not then be a priority to assign parts to a lost item, except for that unless everything in this record has parts assigned, that any unassigned parts is going to show up in some cases in there. Lost is not going to be available to hold anyway, but there are some other statuses that could potentially show up in there, as well as circulation modifiers. Despite the status, despite the circulation modifier, if parts have been assigned to even one item on that record, they need to be assigned to all of them. So because I have blanket working locations, I can actually go in and do this and assign all of those parts. Since there's only one part, I don't have any question whatsoever. And there are some cases where there's more than one parts and I can still make some determinations. So I do look at each of these individually to make that determination. This is kind of a long one. And the reason I decided to do this is because I can do that, I'm essentially able to do, in this case, the work of like 25 catalogers on this record much quicker than writing the email, sending out, please check this record, blah, 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 blah. My hope is to get a significant portion of this done. This takes a second for it to actually catch up. We're going to see this refresh. And now on that record, that is not going to show up. I do. And at some point I do have a fair amount of power, but I also have a limited time. And so at some point I may have a call out for some individuals who are interested in this, who I can deputize to have some expanded locations after we go through this. I'm not sure yet. I was thinking it through yesterday as I was assigning parts because I have lots of time to think about things as I'm waiting for screens to reload. So that is one thing in here. Now, and I'm going to just close this and I'm going to reopen it. I also don't usually do 100 per screen. I just was doing a little catch up at the end. And of course, that one is not at the top. Oh, anyway, it's down there somewhere. This is another reason to not have so many on the one screen, but it's updated. Yay. So at some point, and I have done 0 with Jefferson County. I've been going in alphabetical order. That means that I've spent so much time with Adams County Public Library purely because they're the first one in line. And they had, so if at any point somebody wants their bucket before I get there, just let me know and I'll share that with you for sure. But all that to say 2 things: that we do need to prioritize all of our media, and that adding parts to new media needs to be something that is added to everybody's workflow, because we know that all of those types of AV should have parts based on the procedures guide. And so the first one that's adding a holding gets to be the first one to add a part for theirs. If you know that it's, for instance, on a combo pack, you could go ahead and add the other parts even if you didn't use them, but you don't necessarily have to. But just to keep that in mind, that this does need to become a priority, so that the stuff that, and I'm working on stuff that is already in the collection, but not stuff that's being added, because it honestly, it takes a day just to organize the spreadsheet that comes out with hundreds of thousands of records and then divvying it up. So this is a little bit behind, but because I know that it's going to open up and show accurate information in item status, I can see all of that. So that's that on parts. I know that that is a horse that just keeps getting whipped way too much, but I don't know that it is too much, because we all want these things to be discoverable and understandable for our patrons and for our staff as well. I mean, this really impacts the way that our circulation reference staff interact with the public and provide service. So, okay, this is what I have on the agenda. Pardon me, it's right on the side of my nose. Any questions that you have about anything? I'm very excited about the cover art uploader being something for all of you to use, and also excited, first of all, that people have already been putting the conjoined items into practice. That's exciting to me. And the carousels, for several reasons. I'm excited about finally having the carousels. That was something that we were going to roll out at the annual conference, and then womp womp, COVID. So I guess at least we'll have more time to roll it out and be excited about it. Speaking of parts, I've seen some non-DVD Blu-ray items having parts added. Mentioned, is this, well, parts are not just for AV. They're for anything that has multiple things associated with a single bibliographic record. So if you have like a circulating encyclopedia and you have that one record for that encyclopedia, but you want to sometimes, yes, I've noticed the same thing, like volume 1 or copy 2 on books. That is not what parts are for unless they are on a singular record. There are some cases, especially with some manga titles, where it is one bibliographic record and then there are different parts. But if it's like just the second copy that you have on hand, that should not have a part assigned. And I've seen that on a few of the DVD and Blu-rays as well, when it's been inappropriate, and I've removed it. If you have a question about it, you're welcome to either, of course, keep it on the listserv, and which we all monitor the listserv here too. So if there's a question that comes through and we're like, that's not right. And you can definitely see that the cataloging committee is paying attention to that. They're going to weigh in as well. If we don't, odds are that we've decided that it was something that was within the policy and procedure and could still fly, and y'all could figure it out. But sometimes we miss something. So you can always contact any of us with questions about those things. My preference would be that, my preference would be in terms that you provide provide a bib ID for us so that we can get at it pretty quickly if you have a question about a specific record. Josephine makes a great point about parts. And we know that for AV materials, parts are going to be assigned. There is no reason to not assign those parts early. We are waiting. We've been waiting for so long for code to arrive that allows us to change hold types, but that hasn't arrived yet. And so once parts are assigned to something that maybe has started out as either a copy hold or a title hold, and then parts are assigned, and then it should be a parts hold, we can't easily change it. And so I agree with Josephine. If you know it's going to have parts assigned, go ahead and create those parts and assign your on order parts to that so that the holds can be placed appropriately early. Sometimes you don't know what the part is going to look like until you have the item in hand, but oftentimes we do. I would say too, the other part of this is as I have encountered them, this has not been something that I have been seeking out. I have been updating the existing parts to align with the procedures guide so that, and this is something we talk about in training as well. If you have discs 1 ampersand 2, then, and it's for a DVD, but it doesn't necessarily say that, it should be discs or disc 1 through 2 hyphen capital DVD. And if we're talking about just DVD, it should be capitalized. Just kind of those formatting things. I have been merging and updating and things. There are a few records where there was vol 1, vol 2, vol 3, disc 1, disc 2, disc 3, disc 1 DVD, disc 2 DVD, disc 3 DVD. And I knew that the volume was, first of all, if it is volume, it should be spelled out as volume. Per the procedures guide, that's in there pretty explicitly. But I also knew that each disc held a volume. And so based on that, the procedures guide is that it's going to be disc 1. And then you can see what's on disc 1 by just looking at the item description if you need to do that. And then, so merging all of those so that when somebody goes to place a hold, they don't think that those are all different things. They just have these 3 options and they pick one, or all discs, of course. So that's been part of this process, which also kind of impacts the time associated with doing it, is going in and cleaning up the part labels. The other thing I do want to say, this sounds really, everything that I think I've been saying sounds really negative, like somehow people haven't been doing things right. Overall, I mean, my whole job here has been to clean up a thing. So I'm obviously going to be looking at things that are not cleaned up yet. But overall, I have been so impressed with the diligence that people are taking in doing this. And also keeping in mind that I see kind of this 1,000-foot view of it. I mean, you saw my interface. I can do all of that. I can see all of it. I can fix all of it in kind of one fell swoop. You guys are doing it individually and then also thinking about other libraries as you do it. And I just think that that's amazing. You're doing a great job. And I have zero problem working on this because I see that you are working on it diligently. So thanks. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, I'll move on to announcements. Or you can still do it while I do announcements. Okay, attendance check-in. Let me go ahead and share this into the chat box. Just go ahead, put your first name, last name, and your email address. That way I can get a LAU certificate to you, and then also include, again, the link to the slides and the recording, which the slides have all the links in it. Then there is also, if you'd like to talk about something specifically, the future topics questionnaire. And the Evergreen Cataloging Working Group, which is one of my absolute favorite Evergreen general groups. It's led by Jennifer Weston, who works for Equinox as a trainer, but she also moderates several things within the community. The next meeting will be on the 12th, which is next week. We always get stuff done there and learn new things. Let me see if we have an agenda up for that next. And they are recorded as well, so you can see some things that have gone on previously. There is not an agenda up for next week yet, but that is not terribly surprising. But the alternate subject headings was something that we've talked a lot about in Evergreen, Indiana, had then the discussion with the larger community. The slides are available, the YouTube recording, and you can see all the different topics that have been covered and kind of go down a rabbit hole there if you want to. The next cataloging committee meeting for Evergreen, Indiana is going to be on December the 2nd. That is open to everybody to attend. You're highly encouraged. Again, it is a pretty long meeting. Sometimes they stretch into about 2.5 hours, but a lot of work does get done and questions can be asked, and you can kind of see where all of this stuff comes from. It is not from me. It is not from Keith. It is not from Lynn. It is from all y'all. So and that's good, by the way. That's a good thing. We will not be having a cataloging roundtable in November because the day we would have it is the day that the new features webinars are going to, the new cataloging features webinars are going to be happening in the morning and the evening of the first day. It's actually the 4th day, but still. All right, this is what I have for today. Questions, comments, considerations. If not, the recording for today will be up pretty soon on YouTube. Fill out the check-in so I can get a follow-up email to you, and I will see you probably sometime pretty soon in one of these upcoming trainings. If not, have a great day. Thank you so much for being here.